Hi guys, it's your girl Victoria Henrietta. Thank you for joining me today. We have a very special guest, Ros McFadden, and we are talking about breastfeeding today. So thank you very much for joining me, Ros.
It's a pleasure.
How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Good.
Do you want to just explain what it is you're going to talk about to us today?
Yeah, well today I'm going to be talking about one of the initiatives that I've developed called #KeepingMum.
Lovely.
And what that is, it's a set of services to support employers to support their breastfeeding employees.
Great, okay.
Not a subject that's often spoken about.
No, it's not, which is really strange considering you have so many women in the workplace and it can be so difficult for a woman who is trying to go back to work but still wants to continue nursing. Perhaps they need to pump or whatever their situation is. You're often not supported by your workplace. So it sounds fabulous.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that sort of triggered it, that there's 1 in 8 women think they have to give up before they go back to work, yet you're advised to breastfeed up to 1 year, but actually recommended for at least 2 years. So if you're going to do what the government's telling you to do and the World Health Authority are telling you what to do, then you need that support.
Definitely.
Out the other side. It's not just about in those early weeks.
Because for a lot of women, you know, there's absolutely no way you could go without not working for 2 whole years.
Absolutely.
So you need that support to be able to raise your family, carry on breastfeeding if you want to, and go back to work.
Exactly. And actually the other thing, Victoria, that triggered it was when shared parental leave came in.
Mm-hmm.
And I was sitting on the other side of the telly going, yeah, that's great, but what about the breastfeeding mums? My family will laugh at me because I'm always shouting at the news. But it was about, okay, that's great to actually get dads involved and give dads more time off as well. But actually what they were promoting is for mums to go back to work earlier, which is great. And, you know, if the mum's actually earning more than the partner or the husband, I mean, that was my case early with my first 3. That's fantastic. But actually she should still be able to feed her baby because that's still really important.
Tell me a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got to this point.
Okay, so yeah, bit of a diverse background.
Yeah, because I saw that you sort of were a fashion student. I mean, you look very fashionable. I'm loving the outfit, so I can believe that. But it's a very different from being a fashion student to a lactation consultant and everything. So
exactly. Well, you know, I am 53, so it's quite a long, you know, quite a bit of long time. But yeah, I studied art, went to London College of Fashion, studied fashion, and it was the late 80s. And in the late 80s, everybody should be buying a house.
Right.
So there was me, a 21-year-old, being told by my boyfriend, we need to buy a house.
Yeah.
So I didn't go into fashion at all. I went into a sales job so I could get a mortgage. And that is how sad life was then.
Yeah.
I've regretted it ever since. I really should have gone into fashion.
But you're here where you are today and doing wonderful things. So
it has actually come full circle. I'm sort of jumping about a bit. When I was 7, I was asked what did I want to do. And I always said I want to be a furniture designer. And I know we're going to talk about that a bit later. And actually, it's come full circle because I am actually designing something that you could actually say is furniture.
True, yes.
So weird. Yeah, but I went to London College of Fashion, bought a house in Milton Keynes because I couldn't afford it in Hatfield where I was from. And did actually start working for textiles and then fashion companies in their merchandise department. So I did sort of step back into fashion. Had 3 children. I used to work for Home Retail Group at Argos. Had rather not the happiest marriage in the world, shall we say.
Right.
So I had 3 very small children. I had 3 under 5 and got divorced.
Oh God, so 3 children under 5. And a divorce.
Yeah, got divorced.
Gosh. Right.
Had to try and find a house to house the 3 of us. And then wasn't actually expecting 6 months later to fall in love with the love of my life.
Which is lovely. I love that.
Sad.
Yeah.
Like we've been together for 17 years and I'm still
smitten. That's how it should be. That's perfect.
Absolutely. I know, it's pathetic. But
so cute.
He proper soulmate. And he actually worked in the same place I did. And then I fell pregnant with my 4th child and Kev's first.
Right.
And lost my job.
Right, okay.
When I was I think I was only about 8 weeks pregnant. The company knew I was pregnant and I won't say any more than there was a non-disclosure agreement. I was paid off. Really, really sad. Obviously, I couldn't get any work because I was pregnant and had my baby. Had Darcy, who's wonderful. But that was the turning point. I was like, right, do you know what? All my friends asked me about breastfeeding. I'd breastfed all 4 of the kids with varying degrees of success. And I said to my husband, like, I really want to sort of help people with breastfeeding. Like, maybe be a breastfeeding counsellor. But then I was like, this was an NCT sale, and I was like, but I really don't want to do it just for the NCT mums. I come from like quite a socialist background. It's like, no, I want to do it for everybody.
Yeah.
And my husband went, do you want to just go and be a midwife then? Go full hog. I was like, yeah. So that's what I did.
Yeah.
And I actually went to Northampton University.
Yeah, I saw that.
I got an honours degree, and that was it.
Lovely.
So yeah, I went into midwifery, worked with vulnerable mums, which actually was my real passion. But then started realising, no, I really want to turn full circle and actually support breastfeeding. So I qualified to be a lactation consultant, which is like the expert in the field,
right,
so to speak, and secured a job as infant feeding lead at the hospital.
Lovely.
Yeah,
so I saw on your website you sort of deal with diagnosing tongue tie and things like that. So what does a lactation consultant actually do?
Yeah, no, good question. So what a lactation consultant does, it's not just about supporting breastfeeding. So about 96% of issues are just down to latch. Okay, and so not everyone needs a lactation consultant, but what we do is we understand the physiology of breast tissue, breastfeeding, breast milk, the face, the mouth, the body. I mean, it's just so intricate.
The amount of times I've sat with a kid on my boob looking at YouTube thinking, is the lip bent under? Are they making sucking sound? Can I hear it? I'm like, babe, how is this? Does it look the same? Like, it's so confusing.
Exactly. It makes it sound so confusing, but actually by the more knowledge you have, the easier that can come across, and that is what we have. I've developed an app called the Breastfeeding Hub app, and I've got lots of little videos, and just for those moments when mum's there 3 a.m, go, I don't know what's going on, what's normal, how many poos should they have? Really, we do 1,000 hours of practice, 90 hours of study, and then an exam to become a lactation consultant. The 1,000 hours of practice, if you're a health professional, you've got those anyway. But we learn from things from ethics through to breast cancer, hormonal problems, medication. You know, so if you imagine a specialism as a doctor would have, it's a similar. Not saying that we're like a doctor, but similar sort of specialism.
So you mentioned that you fed your children with varying degrees of success. Kind of fill me in on that a little bit more.
Yeah, well, as with every first-time mum, you have no idea what you're doing. Bear in mind, I was a midwife after I had my children, so I didn't really know very much. I've got 3 brothers, and my sister-in-law's all breastfed, so I was used to having breastfeeding around me. But I had quite a controlling husband, shall we say, but actually it's quite a common thing to hear as well, that he wanted to feed the baby as well. This was from day one. So every night at 9 o'clock she had a bottle of formula for my first baby. I was told by midwives, because I had fair hair and pale skin, that I would get sore nipples and they would be hanging off and bleeding. Is the load of rubbish that I was told. This was 1995. So it hurt. It was hard, it was bleeding, I was crying. She cried and cried and cried. She was really sick. And I was just like, oh, well, that's what babies do. That's what it's like. So that was Alicia, but same with their name. 18 months later, I had Ollie, her brother, and he got on with it straight away. Like, knew exactly what he was doing.
Were you breastfeeding both at the same time?
No.
Okay.
So I only fed Alicia. I had to go back to a job at 8 weeks. My ex-husband would bring her at 5 o'clock to pick me up. I'd be getting like wet patches in my dress, like bursting out of my dresses. I think I gave up probably about 6 months with her, and it was proper mixed feeding. It was getting less and less breast milk, but with no support. I wasn't told how to do that, whether it's right, whether it's wrong, what was going on, why my nipples were hanging off in those early days. So I had Ollie. cracked on straight away. He was absolutely fine with feeding. And then got my job at Home Retail Group when he was 6 months old, so he had to go to a childminder. But I did, again, we brought formula in because I went back to work, because I thought that's what I had to do. But he did feed morning and night.
Yeah.
He didn't like dummies, he just liked boobs, so that was good.
Yeah.
But I probably gave up feeding him about 9 months. Had Elliot just over 2 years later. He was a bit of an accident, a bit of a shock.
Yeah.
Again, cracked on with breastfeeding really well with him, but I had to, because I had a better job than my husband, I had to go back to work as early as possible.
Right.
And so as early as possible was 12 weeks. So I had 3 children in a childminder, one of whom I was breastfeeding. The childminder knew nothing about breast milk because all her mum's bottle fed. And so I was just slowly encouraged to less and less breastfeeding, more and more bottle feeding. And again, I think Elliot was probably about the same, about 8-9 months. So about 5 years later, I had Darcy.
Yeah.
And breastfed like a dream. Fed her till about 11 months. And I thought she was starting to go off it, but it wasn't that at all. It was just I didn't realise sometimes I have a bit of a strike and I don't really want it. And yeah, so I fed her better, but now I know what I know. It makes sense. My youngest, so funny, she says, well, that's why I'm the healthiest out of the lot of them and I'm the most intelligent.
I've got the good gold top milk.
Honestly,
Yeah.
talk about a sibling rivalry. They use
Yeah.
breastfeeding as their way of
that's
fighting
amazing.
each other.
Yeah. You mentioned something there actually about the childminder not having any other breastfeeding mums. Are there any statistics, or have you noticed any patterns about groups of people that do or don't breastfeed? Because my mum was from the era where it was formula is best.
Yeah.
We've made formula, it's better than breast milk. So in the beginning, she was a bit like, oh, you don't really need to breastfeed. But I was adamant that that's what I wanted to do. And, you know, she was on board with that. But, you know, I could have easily been sort of swayed and thought, oh, actually, yeah, I'll go with bottle then, that's fine. And I am a believer of, you know, happy mum, happy baby. So, you know, it's a woman's choice. But, you know, I'm glad I did take that route. But yeah, are there any patterns?
I won't talk about patterns because in terms of statistics, they're really rubbish and we only do stats really up to about 6 to 8 weeks. But in terms of patterns and like cultural patterns, you're absolutely right. As soon as formula started coming in around the 40s and 50s, it makes huge amounts of money. And so everyone thought it was the best thing to do and it was easy and more people were working and so on and so forth. And then what's happened is the rhetoric's changed, that they go, oh, well, you don't have to do it. And it's fine because you can have formula. And what's happened is what formula does has been sort of hidden under the carpet of the difference between the two things. It isn't just another way of feeding. And I'm absolutely the same. You know, it's a mother's choice. But the question I have is, are those mothers actually informed?
Informed, yeah.
How can you have an informed choice if you're not told about the impact of formula? And so that's the really interesting stance. And I think, you know, I was surrounded, my mum was really unusual because she had my brothers in the 50s, early 60s, breastfed all of them, and that was all they were getting. I'm adopted.
Okay.
So my mum couldn't breastfeed me, and I know she would have done if she knew she could.
But she could now, right? Because you
I
can get
could
drugs now that
induced
start
lactation is quite a common practice.
It's even a side effect for some drugs and things, isn't it?
Yeah, domperidone.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, if you think about grandmothers in Africa where there's high HIV, what happens is they relactate so they can breastfeed their kids.
Right.
And so that happens in a lot of the sort of less developed countries where HIV is really, really high. It's a common practice.
Right,
So
okay,
yeah, absolutely. So, you know, my mum would have definitely have breastfed me. So I was surrounded by breastfeeding, but my ex-husband's family, very much, no one breastfed. No one didn't really get it, didn't understand it. And because he was quite controlling, that was the sort of environment that I was in, if that makes
Which
does
is
that
not
make
nice
sense?
at all, yeah.
In terms of sort of, you know, childminders, some are better than others. Nurseries are getting there. And this is what one of the initiatives I do is looking at breastfeeding policies and really getting people to understand it's not their fault, and it's just like if you only know about formula or you see more formula than you do breastfeeding, why would you know what to do?
I mean, even some of the advertising is so misleading. Like you see an advert on TV and there'll be a mum breastfeeding, but actually the advert is selling formula, like a follow-on milk or something, and it's just, I mean, it's all very muddled, I think, for a lot of people. So
shall I tell you an interesting fact about
Yes,
follow-on
please.
milk, which I don't think many people know? Follow-on milk, which should never have been produced. So the advice is the only milk a baby should have if they don't have breast milk is a first milk.
right.
Okay. Follow-on milk was brought in because the law says you're not allowed to advertise, discount or promote formula first milk. So what they did was they made a different milk
Yeah.
that they were allowed to promote and advertise
Wow.
and talk about. And it's actually got, it says, oh, it's packed full of iron, but being packed full of iron from a cow's milk, actually the babies can't break it down, and iron attracts bacteria.
Ah, interesting.
So all these things, and they go, oh yes, we know breastfeeding's best, but the rhetoric is underlying that actually, yeah, we've done this thing, it's really, really great, but actually breastfeeding cannot be equated to formula milk. It's
That's
totally
crazy.
different.
Yeah, totally. Wow, okay, that's interesting. That's good to know though, and I hope that people watching the show will be like, oh, okay, I've learnt something, learnt something new. But so you've sort of told us about why you started the venture, and that there is a need for strategizing that within business that puts families and mums first. So what are the sort of next steps for the business? What do you actually see the business doing? What's happening?
I left my sort of lead role in the NHS 18 months ago, slowly started developing these sort of new initiatives, and #Keeping Mum has sort of taken on legs of its own, actually. It's quite interesting. So the idea of it is to, like you say, to get businesses to strategise for family, and people look at me going, what on earth do you mean by that? So if you think about this, you own a business and you know exactly what you're going to do if there's a bomb nearby. There's a disaster strategy. The risk of your member of staff having a baby is far higher
Far more likely,
than the building burning down.
Yeah.
Okay? So, but there's no strategies. People get really scared. They're going, oh, it's, I can't ask somebody when they're in an interview whether they're going to have a baby. It's like, no, because you don't need to. But if only bosses just sat back and go, right, this is my department. What if that role someone goes on shared parental leave, or that role they go on adoption leave, or that member of staff there, she becomes pregnant? What do I do? And you don't need to know exactly, but you'd have a strategy plan, and that's what I'm trying to get people to do. So the discrimination starts to go.
Yes.
Those inappropriate thoughts which are natural. I do this pitch where I go, I'm pregnant. And who dreads hearing those words? Because managers do dread hearing those words that someone's going to leave. But if you've just got a little idea in the background, you know exactly what you're going to do, you strategise, and
it takes all that stress away because you're already
You've got a plan.
prepared. And also it must make your employees so much happier to know that they will be supported. It's going to make them want to come back to work rather than thinking, oh God, I don't want to go back there, or I don't want to stress. Because I've literally been to work and been like pumping in the store cupboard in the dark, like thinking, oh God, this noise with the hand pump, thinking, just ground swallow me up now. Like because you have is it the mum pods?
Yes. So they come back. Actually, I do like a back to work plan for mums such as you, and it's always, you can guarantee the people that come and see me are teachers or healthcare workers, and everybody pumps in the cupboard.
Oh, do they? Yeah, it's the place to be.
Every teacher I know, I pump in the cupboard.
Yeah, next to the Romeo and Juliets and the backing paper for the boards.
Yeah,
Mental.
exactly. Really, really common. But yeah, what happened with the mum pods, as part of #Keeping Mum, I collaborated with a pump company, so Ardo, and Ardo promote breastfeeding over bottle feeding. So they're what we call a code compliant company. And we developed this incentive where we would put together a maternity leave pack. So that would include a breast pump and all bits of paraphernalia. So when you go on maternity leave, your company give you that as a gift.
Wow.
Okay. Then when you come back to work, you get a little back to work gift, and that's got the cool bag and things like that. And the idea is that the company then hire a hospital pump that they put in a room in their business, so the mum doesn't have to drag her pump into work every day.
That's such a good idea.
So again, it's incentivising. It's saying we care about our mums. We want you to come back to work.
Yeah.
And I sort of having a meeting with Ardo, and I was like, yeah, and I'll call it a mum pod. And then I was sitting in the meeting pod at the NatWest Accelerator Hub, and I was like, mum pod. Actually, that's what I'm going to do. We're going to design it. And that's where it came about. So it's on the back of #KeepingMum, these services. I actually started thinking, actually, this could be a standalone product that I could design and actually take forward. And so what a mum pod is you've illustrated it beautifully. It's a place a mum can go when she's away from her baby to go and pump in silence, because it will be soundproofed, in comfort, in cleanliness.
And just
in
relax,
private.
in private. That's the main thing, that you're not worrying about people walking in or people hearing you.
Exactly.
That's really positive. And my understanding is also that it's not going to be just for women that are breastfeeding, but it might be for a pregnant woman, for example, who needs just to have a little bit of downtime. Yeah. I remember being pregnant at work and literally being asleep on the desk and children coming up to the window and filming me through the window, and we go, like it was awful. So it would have been so nice to have somewhere that I could go where I just could relax.
Exactly. And actually linking into the word rest, that's where the law comes in. So the law doesn't say you have to be allowed to breastfeed your baby or express your breast milk, but it does say that pregnant and breastfeeding mums have to be able to rest.
Right.
And that's another part of the element of #KeepingMum, is to explain to mums who are pregnant that the reason they need to rest is to make sure their baby's health is improved. So by resting when you should and reducing your stress levels, you're enabling the baby to grow. So it's very common for me to see as a midwife, when I was a community midwife, when mums are working really stressed, they're working in London or they're working all hours like I know teachers do, and stress hormones start to slow growth. And the minute you rest, and the minute you maybe leave work earlier than you wanted to, or you take a week off, that growth pattern starts to come back again.
Right.
So actually by allowing and understanding that and saying, right, okay, go and have a 20-minute rest. You know, we can get the TA to keep hold of the class for now, or something like that. So yes, you're right. It isn't just for those that are pumping, but it will be for those who are pregnant. But the idea of the mum pod has gone sort of out of that as well, because it won't just be in places of work. The idea is that it will then be out and about. So on train concourses, airports and airport terminals, out in city centres. And
that's great.
Yeah, and those ones will be so... I have so many of the mums that come to my little drop-in group in Wolverton. They're like, oh, Ros, I'm going on a hen party and I don't know what to do. I'm going to be away from baby. And I was literally Googling where's breastfeeding friendly in Amsterdam the other day.
Yeah, oh really? Yeah. Was there anywhere?
Yeah.
I imagine it's quite a forward-thinking place. I imagine there must be quite a few.
It's not too bad, but actually there are some that, don't like it, which is, I don't know about the laws over in Amsterdam, but it's things like that. It's like, mums go on hen do's, mums go, they have a social life. It's not even just about going back to work, but also when you go back to work, you have kit days, keep in touch days, and you might do that when baby's 10 weeks old or something, because there's a particular thing you want to
be back in on. I actually have, I'd like to say, I've taken a baby on one hen do with me because she was too young. I didn't want to break my supply, and I've also been very drunk, pumping one hand, Prosecco in the other hand, whatever, pumping and dumping, so I don't have a drunk baby when I get home. And that actually, is that a myth or not? Will your baby get drunk off your drunk milk?
Very small amounts will go in, but actually there will be a certain amount, and it's more about the longevity of how long alcohol stays in the blood system. So we all metabolise it differently, don't we? You know, like you might not get drunk and your mate's on the floor after two Proseccos. Nobody knows about your metabolism, but if you don't feel you drunk anymore, it generally is about between 2 and 4 hours. It should be fine. But you epitomise you're the breastfeeding mum that I absolutely support.
Thank you.
It's just... You don't have to be radical. You don't need to. You just do it, and it's just like you understand why you want to protect it, but you still have a life, and it's about you give all to your children, but there's still you there as well.
But you don't want to lose yourself, which I think is important.
It's so important.
I think
for
society
your mental health.
society kind of expects us to give everything, but actually you need to be happy as well. So there has to be that happy medium where you can be mum, but be yourself, or be a businesswoman, or play your sport, or do whatever it is that makes you happy. It's so, so important. And like you say, for your mental health, because your hormones are already all over the place, they don't settle down with breastfeeding. It takes a lot longer. So it's so important to look after yourself.
And I think also those things that you just illustrated there, and that is the point at which people come in and go, well, you can just give it formula.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm just trying to say. It's like, actually, you don't.
So give me a little rundown. What would you say, why should women breastfeed? If they can and if they want to, what are the benefits of it?
Okay. Well, it's really interesting because one of your little words there was if they can, and this is what everybody says, if they can. And actually, those that can't produce enough breast milk for their baby is only 1.9%.
Wow, okay.
So it's really tiny. But what's happened is most of those mums who've said, I can't produce, I didn't have enough, was because they weren't supported to do so by people who knew what they're doing in the early days. So most people can. So I just want to sort of say that. But why? We can rant on about the benefits. You know, your child's going to have less chance of having gastroenteritis, ear infections, reduce the risk of cancer, reduce the risk of diabetes, you know, and I can go on and I can list. And most of the time, mums are just going, yeah, I've heard it all before. So what I want to do is explain it this way. Breast milk is completely different from dried cow's milk.
Yeah.
Okay. So the breast milk that a baby gets comes from the mum that grew her, him, the breasts that have been in the environment that the baby's growing up in, yeah. So a baby in Scotland is going to have different breast milk from a baby in Milton Keynes, and your breast mate will have different breast milk to you, and you will have different breast milk at 12 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon when you've got a cold, if it's hot, if it's cold, if you've been in contact with someone with some illness. So do you see what I mean?
So it's ever evolving.
It constantly changes. It's like blood.
Yeah.
It's exactly like blood. They call it white blood. So formula is dried cow's milk, and that was made from a particular cow who was in a particular field, and her milk was made for her calf, yeah? It's then dried. You cannot take out all the bacteria from it. And actually, every element of that dried cow's milk is meant for the DNA of a baby cow.
Yeah.
So it's a different species milk, but it's also dried. So you know when we go on about sterilising and bottles and teats and things like that, the reason we have to be so stringent about it is because you cannot kill bacteria in formula.
Right.
Okay, no matter how sterile the factories are. Breast milk stacks of bacteria in it. But the bacteria in breast milk is either the bacteria that's left is good bacteria, and any bad bacteria gets eaten up by the breast milk cells.
Right, okay.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like they're just completely different things.
I mean, it's so fascinating how your body does it.
Yeah.
I also read as well that when the baby is nursing, your nipple has glands in that reacts to the saliva and transmit signals to your brain, and your brain says, oh, your baby's getting a cold, give it extra antibodies, and it will literally cater the milk specifically for the baby on that day, in that moment.
Yeah,
which is mental.
You've been listening. You know your stuff.
Top of the class.
Absolutely. I thought you were going to tell something else, which I will tell you about. Yeah. I get like really geeky about breastfeeding, about breast milk. And you know there's little knobblies on your areola, and they're called Montgomery's tubercles, okay?
Right.
And they secrete a fluid when the baby's first born that smells and tastes of amniotic fluid. So this brand new born baby has been used to smelling and drinking this amniotic fluid, which tastes like their unique mother. So it will taste of her diet and everything like that. It won't taste like another baby's milk. Yeah. So when they start looking for the breast, they can smell it and they can taste it. And so they know that's to do with food. Yeah. The saliva thing, what it actually does is it's a cellular thing. So say, for instance, your other half took one of your babies out to Tesco And you haven't been to that particular Tesco, and that Tesco's got the dirty British public, loads of germs going around. So the baby's breathing all those germs in, gets into their saliva. Baby comes back to you, breastfeeds, that saliva goes into your breast milk, into you. You start making antibodies. You go, oh, we don't know what that stuff is. You make antibodies, so next time you've got cover for it. And so has baby.
That is just crazy, isn't it?
It's just like the coolest thing ever. And so when mums go to me, I definitely want to give my baby breast milk, but I'm not going to breastfeed. It's actually the action of breastfeeding. And it's not just about food.
But pumping breast milk is better than formula, but still not quite as good as nursing from the breast.
Any day. And so it's about, don't make those choices, about understand, get it off to a good start, get support. If I could ever say anything to a mum, get the right support and get that support in the first 4 weeks. And if you are nurtured in those first 4 weeks, you're going to be fine.
Because the first 4 weeks are hell. They are hell. And my right boob, like, the latch for months, it was, it still had, every time I was going to put baby on this boob, I was like, oh no, you know, I'm scared to do it. Eventually it was fine, but I remember thinking, is this going to be forever? It really hurts. My nipples are bleeding, they're cracked, like what is going on? But I luckily had a friend who was a midwife who'd already breastfed, and she was literally coming round like, come on, no, stick her on, it's going to be fine, you're going to be fine.
This is why you know your stuff.
Yeah, I would ring her and be like, oh, you know, I don't know. And she, you know, I was very supported, so I was lucky that I did have that. But I do remember thinking, where are these women who lied to me and told me that it's really lovely and that it's great? Because it's not great, I hate it. But soon enough.
It so isn't great, actually. I'm not, you know, I'm honest about it. If a mum says to me, oh, well, you know, is it easy? I say, no, it's not easy. I do an antenatal class and we call it Keeping It Real, the realities of breastfeeding. And I talk about types of delivery, I talk about position, I talk about what happens with tongue tie, or if the nipples are hanging off and everyone's going, oh, it looks like a lovely latch, and she's in agony. And it isn't easy, and there's all sorts of little things that can get in the way of what is a normal process, not like, you know, the best normal process, but things that are worth it aren't easy. Marriage isn't easy, is it? You know, like being with a partner's not easy. Delivery, pregnancy, none of it's easy.
But if every woman had access to that, I wonder how many more women would be breastfeeding.
A lot more.
It's crazy. And, you know, again, I don't want anyone to watch this and think, oh, well, you know, they're making me feel bad. I don't want to make anyone feel bad.
Me neither.
It's definitely your choice. But, you know, I do know I've had plenty of friends who have gone through the process and, you know, felt unsupported and ended up not breastfeeding. So something like that would have been perfect for those mums.
Exactly. And actually, you know, I've just got an interview in a book that's coming out, and it's about the grief and trauma of breastfeeding. So for those mums, a lot of them are traumatised by it, and they don't realise until it's triggered next time round they have a baby, and so they get very defensive. And absolutely, if they wanted to breastfeed, 90% of mums that gave up didn't want to give up, and they're the people I'm there for. There are some mums who go, do you know what, it's not for me. Whatever their reasons, that's absolutely fine. As long as they understand what formula is, and they understand what breastfeeding is and what breast milk is.
And they've
made an informed choice. Absolutely. But those 90% of mums that didn't want to give up are traumatised, you know, and it's so sad. And
I mean, the whole process is traumatising from getting pregnant, carrying a big lump around for 9 months, getting
delivering
it out, in whatever means you had to do it by, and then having to breastfeed. And, you know, no one tells you about the cluster feeding and about the sleepless nights and all of that. But by the end, you know, after however many months, you're literally like, you know, you don't have to worry about sterilising bottles or doing any of that. It's just baby on the boob. Even in the night, you just roll over. They're crying again, roll over, baby on the boob, baby's back to sleep. Like, it becomes easy.
And that's what you hear from the ones that this is what my group, I really encourage. So the mums stay for weeks and weeks because they've come out the other side, and it's so lovely. We get these mums coming in, the baby's like 5 days old and she's crying. And then we'll get a mum there.
And they're probably looking at you thinking, okay, it's going to get easier,
and then they're like, oh, you know, you're just sitting there. And they go to, no, believe me, I was you 4 months ago. And hearing that peer support is just as valuable as seeing me. You know, they come to my group because there's a lactation consultant there, but there's also other mums there. and you need the whole thing. Does that make sense?
Especially if you are, you know, someone perhaps who's in your situation where you haven't got support, or you've even got people around you who are anti-breastfeeding.
Absolutely.
You might need that one place that you can go to, and
it's like a little safe spot.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been lovely to have you. Is there anything else you wanted to discuss?
No, absolutely awesome to have been interviewed by you. Not just your passion comes across as well. I'm normally with people who don't actually come from the tact where they've done it and they understand it. So that's quite refreshing. But like you say, we don't want anyone out there just feeling that we're saying that they're bad if they haven't done it. Absolutely not. But please ask for support.
Yeah, and have you got a website that people can come and have a look at?
Yeah, so it's breastfeedinghub.org. But what I'm thinking of changing that, because at my group and me, I help with feeding, bottle feeding, mix feeding, giving up, starting, relactating.
Because I mean, there's all kinds of issues. Giving up is as hard as starting sometimes.
Absolutely. So
lovely.
Do get in touch.
Hopefully, you know, if you need any support, if you want to have a look, you can have a look on Ros's website. And thank you very much for watching. I hope there's lots of mums out there who watch this video and are inspired to try breastfeeding or to continue with it when times are hard. And at least now you've got someone that you can go to and check out their website for any support. So thank you very much for watching, and we will see you soon.